Domby and Son, Chapter 1. Domby sat in the corner of the darkened room in the great armchair by the bedside, and Son lay tucked up warm in a little basket bedside, carefully disposed on a low settee immediately in front of the fire and close to it, as if his constitution were analogous to that of a muffin, and it was essential to toast and brown while he was very new. Domby was about 48 of age. Son was about 48 minutes. Domby was rather bald, rather red, and though a handsome, well-made man, too stern and pompous in appearance to be prepossessing. Son was very bold and very red, and though, of course, an undeniably fine infant, somewhat crushed and spotty in his general effect as yet. On the brow of Domby, time and his brother Care had set some marks, as on a tree that was to come down in good time. Remorseless twins they are, for striding through their humid forests, notching as they go, while the countenance of Son was crossed with 1,000 little creases, which this same deceitful time would take delight in smoothing out and wearing away, with just the flat part of his scythe as a preparation of the surface for his deeper operations. Domby, exulting in the long-looked-for event, jingled and jingled the heavy gold watch chain that depended from below his blue trim coat, whereover the buttons sparkled phosphorulously in the feeble rays of the distant fire. Son, with his little fist curled up and clenched, seemed in his feeble way to be squaring at a distance, for having come upon him so unexpectedly. "The house will once again, Mrs. Domby," said Mr. Domby, "be not only in name but in the fact Domby and Son," and he added, in a tone of luxurious satisfaction, with his eyes half closed as if he were reading this in the name in a device of flowers and inhaling their fragrance at the same time, "Domby and Son." The words had such a softening influence that he appended a term of endearment to Mrs. Domby's name, though not without some hesitation, as being a man but little used to that form of address, and said, "Mrs. Domby, my dear." A transient flush of faint surprise overspread the sick lady's face as she raised her eyes toward him. "He will be christened Paul, my Mrs. Domby, of course?" She feebly echoed, "Of course," or rather expressed it by the motion of her lips, and closed her eyes again. "His father's name, Mrs. Domby, and his grandfather's. I wish his grandfather were alive this day. There's some inconvenience and necessity of writing Junior," said Mr. Domby, making a fictitious autograph on his knee. "But it is merely of a private and personal complexion. It doesn't enter the corresponding of the house. Its signature remains the same." And again he said, "Domby and Son," in exactly the same tone as before. Those 3 words conveyed the one idea of Mr. Domby's life. The earth was made for Domby and Son to trade in, and the sun and moon were made to give them light. Domby and rivers and seas were formed to float their ships. Rainbows gave them promise of fair weather. Winds blew for or against their enterprises. Stars and planets circled in their orbits to preserve an inviolate system of which they were the center. Common abbreviations took new meanings in his eyes, and had the sole reference to him. A.D. had no concern with Anno Domini, but stood for Anno Domby and Son.